you're able, would you please stand for the reading of the scripture lesson? For right now, I'll be turning to several verses later in the sermon, but for now, let me just set this up by reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. I read from the New King James Version of the Scriptures. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man, or humanity, in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. Thank you, musicians. Thank you, AV team. Thank you, ushers, for all that you do. I want to add a letter to the acronym you see on the screen, because these days the conversation with the LGBT community is ever expanding. It is a dynamic conversation, and now the acronym is LGBTQIA+. And I will explain every letter of the acronym a little later. In addition to LGBTQIA+ being a social issue, it is a theological issue. And I'm eager to know what the Word of God, the Bible, has to say on this issue, and I want my opinion and my stance to be informed by the Word of God. Throughout this series, I will argue that while we need to be politically and socially informed and aware of common policies or current policies and trends, we, the body of Christ, are to be anchored in biblical teaching, and that teaching ought to be our primary source as we figure out where to stand. Let the church say amen. Amen. We are not people who get our position from CNN or from Fox News, from whatever your news source is. We stand on the Word of God. It is the only thing that separates us from those who don't know Christ. We cite the Scriptures. We stand on the Bible, and it is very, very difficult sometimes to have conversations with people for whom the Bible is not authoritative. But we, without apology, say that we are people of the book. In this series on contemporary and potentially divisive issues, I want to reason from the Scriptures. I'm taking my cue from Paul, and I told you I was going to make this statement every week as part of this series. But I'm taking my cue from Paul, who, when he was at Thessaloniki, argued from the Scriptures. Acts 17:2 describes Paul's stance. Then Paul, as his custom was, this is Acts 17:2. Then Paul, as his custom was, went in to them, listen to this, and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the Scriptures. This is not Paul giving his, well, I feel that I've been to Bible studies, which I call share your ignorance Bible study. You just go around the table. Well, I feel, well, what I think is, well, my opinion, well, I know what this says, but I've always thought, well, my grandma said that, my mama used to say, well, what does the Word of God say? They reasoned with them. He reasoned with them from the scriptures, and I want to do the same. Now, let me make no assumptions here about our understanding of this acronym. Thank you, AV team, for making that adjustment. We may not all be clear on what LGBTQIA+ stands for. So let me go through it very, very briefly. But before I do that, let us pray. Holy God, may the light of your word inform us all today. Amen. The L stands for lesbian. These are women sexually attracted to other women. G stands for gay. Any person, this is a generic term, any person attracted to a person of the same sex. B is bisexual. This is a person sexually attracted to both men and women. T has multiple meanings. The T sometimes stands for transsexual, a person who is transitioning from one sex to another using medical and or surgical procedures. Transgender is a person who identifies as a different gender than the one he or she was born as. Q is questioning, and it can also sometimes stand for queer. A questioning person is one who is exploring one's sexuality. They're not sure exactly where they are. They're open, they're looking, they're reading, they're exploring. Queer is one who refuses the labels of our society, especially as relates to gender. It is not an offensive term for many. Some will say, I'm queer. I'm still just kind of, I'm not going to be pinned down by a label. The I is intersex, one who does not fit into gender norms or categories. For instance, they might say, I know I was born male, but I really feel that I am all things. I'm neither male nor female. And they will kind of navigate between the sexes as they, again, try to figure out where they're going to stand. The A is, again, can stand for a couple of things. Asexual, that is a person who is attracted to neither men nor women. Allies, the A sometimes stands for those who are sympathetic to the LGBTQIA+ cause. The plus stands for and others. And that can refer to allies who are with us. That can refer to others who are on this sexual journey. So it can refer to pansexuals. Those are people with a desire for all sexes and all genders. Pansexuals or omnisexuals, they're sometimes called. The plus can stand for those who are polyamorous, who are open to multiple consensual romantic sexual relationships. All of that is included in the plus. Just others. Anybody I didn't cover in the other letters, they're covered in the plus. Now, I want to begin our time today, and I thank you for praying for me. This is going to be a difficult month of preaching for me, taking on very, very hot topics. I want to look at 6 Bible passages briefly that directly address this issue. The LGBTQIA+ community calls these verses clobber verses. That's actually a thing. You can Google the term clobber verses. They have said that the church has used these 6 passages primarily because these 6 passages directly speak about LGBTQIA+ issues, words. They talk about homosexuality or about lesbianism. The LGBTQIA+ community would say that the church uses these 6 passages to beat gay people over the head. they clobber them with them. These are the clobber verses, the so-called clobber passages. And I want to read the passages. I want to give the conservative, evangelical, biblical view of them. And some of them are very, very clear. I simply believe what the Bible says. And then I want to give the LGBTQIA plus response to those same passages. The first is Genesis 19, verses 4 through 25. It is the narrative about Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm just simply going to give you the passages, and then I'm going to give you the LGBTQIA plus position. I believe what the Bible says about what happened in Sodom, what happened in Gomorrah, and the outrageous behavior. Well, let's go to it. Let me not presume that you're familiar with the passage. I was just going to simply have you put it down in your notes. I will not read all of it. If you're interested in these notes, by the way, you can just write to me, and I'll send you my complete manuscript, Richard Allen Farmer, 1951 at gmail.com. Genesis 19, beginning at verse 4, is the passage. Now, before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house, and they called to Lot and said, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may know them carnally." That is, we want to have sex with them. So Lot went out to them through the doorway and shut the door behind him. And he said, "Please, my brethren, do not do so wickedly. See, now I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Please, let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Only do nothing to these men, since this is the reason they've come under the shadow of my roof." That's a real bad response. Bring the men out. We want to have sex with them. No, take my daughters instead. I'm not sure that's a great trade. And they said, "Stand back." Then they said, "This one came in to stay here, and he keeps acting as a judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. But the men reached out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they became weary trying to find the door. Let me skip down to, again, in the interest of time, and I challenge you to read this. Let me skip to 15. The morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, "Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed with the punishment of the city." While he lingered, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, the hands of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. So it came to pass when they brought them outside that he said, "Escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be destroyed." And I will not read the rest, but judgment comes upon the city. Second passage, Leviticus 18:22, which reads, "You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination." Leviticus 20:13, third passage. "If a man lies with a male as he lies with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them." Fourth clobber verse, so-called clobber verse, Romans 1:26 and 27. "For this reason God gave them up to vile passions, for even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error which was due." 1 Corinthians 6:9 to 11, the fifth so-called clobber verse. Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners will inherit the kingdom of God. And such were some of you. But you were washed, but you were sanctified, but you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus and by the Spirit of our God. The sixth and final so-called clobber verse, 1 Timothy 1, 9 and 10. Knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous person, but for the lawless and insubordinate, for the ungodly and for sinners, for the unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for fornicators, for sodomites, for kidnappers, for liars, for perjurers, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine, according to the glorious gospel of the blessed God, which was committed to my trust. Now the LGBTQIA plus response to these clobber verses. Citing Ezekiel 16, 49 and 50, the LGBTQIA plus community, and I've read this on, there are a couple of websites, a very rich one is postbartian.com. Karl Barth, 1886 to 1968, was a Swiss Calvinist theologian and probably most well known for his unfinished multi-volume work called Church Dogmatics. But on a website called Postbartian, there are resources for the LGBTQIA plus community. And they, citing Ezekiel 16, 49 to 50, have said that the sin in Sodom was not the sin of homosexuality, it was the sin of inhospitality. The abomination, they would say, was that Sodom had food and did not share their food with the poor and the needy. Now, I get that connecting of the dots from Ezekiel 16, 49 and 50. I get that. But the LGBTQIA plus community seems to gloss completely over the clear homosexual acts that are presented in Genesis 19. The Leviticus passages, both 18:22 and 20:13, which I read, would be responded to by the LGBTQIA plus community, saying this prohibition is not binding on Christians. After all, this is Old Testament. And we are still trying to figure out how the complex Levitical laws and the Mosaic law, the Old Testament, applies to the Christian church. And that's a very valid argument. There are things in the book of Leviticus, if we say we believe the whole Bible, that's true, but we do not refrain from eating pork. We do not say, well, we can only wear certain garments, and we can't have this touching that, and we don't give ourselves to those restrictions in Leviticus. So we do, in all fairness to our colleagues in the LGBTQIA plus community, in all fairness, we also pick and choose what parts of the Bible we're going to take literally and take as relevant for 2022, and which parts we're going to say, well, that was Old Testament and it does not apply to us. And they would say the same about the passages in Leviticus that relate to homosexuality. The Romans 1:26 passage, in which Paul says that people went against nature and began to have sex with people of the same gender, that passage would be responded to in this way by those of the LGBTQIA plus community. They would say, and by the way, the Romans 1 passage is the only passage where lesbianism is spoken of clearly and specifically. They would say that this speaks of unnatural love. And they would say that when Paul says men were lying with men, going against nature, women were lying with women, going against nature, that Paul is talking about one's own natural sexual orientation. And that indeed, if a heterosexual were to lie with a homosexual, that would be against nature. But if a homosexual would lie with a homosexual, that's their nature, and they're not violating anything. They're not going against nature, they're going with their nature. So they would say that Paul is referring not to going against the natural order. They would say Paul is talking about violating one's own sexual orientation, and that it is improper to indeed violate one's own sexual orientation and go against one's own nature. The 1 Corinthians 6 passage has some Greek words in it translated as homosexual, which could be translated in English as soft, effeminate, and probably refers to, this gets, it's really sad, but in the Greek culture, there were young boys that were trafficked by older homosexual men, not unlike what happens today. They were trafficked by these homosexual older men, and scholars would say that this passage in 1 Corinthians 6 is what is called a vice list. Here are the things that are unacceptable. Homosexuality is among them, but they would say that Paul is specifically speaking to and about these old men who are going after young boys. They would say this does not refer to monogamous, consensual, same-sex relationships. They would say he's not talking about those of us who are in a monogamous, consensual relationship. He's talking about those dirty old men. He's not talking about us. And likewise, they would take the passage in 1 Timothy 1, 9 and 10, and they would say this is another vice list. And again, he is not talking about us. He's aiming at those who are trafficking in young, effeminate, soft boys. And they would say this has nothing to do with a monogamous, consensual relationship, which I'm in, which is according to my sexual orientation and nature. Speaking of nature, the nature versus nurture argument comes into play here. Is a person born gay, or does a person become gay? That is a gay person a person who has made a conscious choice, or are we witnessing biological determinism at work? Is this just the way I was wired? Now, it has been established by the scientific community that there is no such thing as a gay gene. There was groundbreaking work done a number of years ago studying identical twins. Now, you know identical twins share the same DNA. Scientists have said we have studied a number of pairs in which one is gay and one is not. Well, if they share the same DNA, there's obviously not a gay gene. Otherwise, both of them would be gay. There's no gay gene. We are born male or female, and then we are placed in an environment which can shape our tendencies, can shape the way we view our own sexuality. We begin to discover our bodies, ourselves, our interests, our inclinations. And one could say that environment and the examples set before us in that environment might determine and shape our sexual choices. But it doesn't explain how twins, identical twins, can be raised in the same household by the same parents, and one twin is gay and the other straight. Many would say that in the ideal world, what we are seeing is both our nature and our nurturing environment at work as we develop. That is, I'm born male. By the way, I met someone, I spoke with someone 3 days ago, and I've known her for 35 years, but she did not know I was a twin. And I said, oh yes, I have a twin sister. She said, are you identical? I said, it's a sister. Twins of opposite sex cannot be identical, just in case you were wondering. But many would say, in the ideal world, we have both nature and the nurturing environment at work shaping what we become. For instance, I'm born male, and then I'm encouraged by my parents, my grandparents, my teachers and influencers to do boy things. As I grow, I'm given trucks, not dolls, for my birthday. I'm encouraged to walk in a certain way. I'm told this is how a man shakes hands. Likewise, my twin sister was steered toward girl things. She's encouraged to play with dolls and not plastic soldiers. She's told that a young lady walks in a certain way lest she be branded a tomboy. The environment might shape some of how we perceive ourselves as sexual beings. I stand with those who believe that God created us, and this is the passage I read at the beginning of the sermon, Genesis 1, 26, 27. I believe that God created us male or female, and that is what we are. God created us male or female, and that is what we are. And for me or any human to suggest that there's a third or fourth gender is to violate or suggest the insufficiency of divine design. If God created male and female and said so, I don't have the right to tell God, your list is too short. I think there are other genders. That is to suggest the insufficiency of the eternal, to suggest that he doesn't know what he's doing. I interpret these so-called clobber verses as they are written, and I'm not willing to explain them away in order to fit my lifestyle choices. Well, Leviticus, that's Old Testament. All right, we'll go to Matthew chapter 19, verse 4, in which Jesus himself reiterates Genesis 1, 26 and 27, and says, God created them male and female. Jesus said that. So if you're going to say, well, the Old Testament is irrelevant, all right, well, there in the New Testament you have Jesus himself affirming the whole idea that God created us male and female. Now, if we believe the LGBTQIA plus lifestyle to be a deviation from the Creator's design, and if we take it to be an aberration, what should our response be to our friends and relatives? And there is not a person in this room who doesn't know a gay person. Everybody has, I am positive, everybody, even if you don't want to think about it, even if you're embarrassed by it, even if you're confused by it, every person in this room has some relationship to a gay person in your family or your circle of friends. So let's not act like well, this doesn't have anything to do with me. Well, yes, it does. This is your family. These are your friends. So what should our response be? Suppose you stand on the conservative side and say, I can never believe that this is the will of God for you. I cannot believe that God created you gay. What should our response be to our friends, our family? I'm glad you asked. I am constrained by love even if I disagree with you. I am constrained by love even if I do not appreciate or condone or approve of, even if I just cannot get with you on this. I am constrained by love. I do not have the right, and especially in the name of God, I do not have the right to kick you to the curb because you're gay. I just can't. I am constrained by love. Recently, I contacted a friend of mine, and I invited that friend to join me in celebrating a mutual friend's birthday. Let's call the mutual friend Boulevard. Boulevard is gay. I deliberately chose Boulevard because that's not the name of anybody in this room. Boulevard is gay, and I invited my friend to join me in celebrating Boulevard's birthday. The friend wrote, and I have this in a text that I will keep. I understand that Boulevard is gay, the friend said. The friend having not seen Boulevard for years, but I understand Boulevard is gay. Homosexuality is anti my Christian faith, anti the Bible, so I would not be interested in spending money to celebrate with him. My response, excuse me, I, like you, am a person who does not condone the LGBT lifestyle. However, to celebrate another year of life of a gay person is not equivalent to approving of their lifestyle and behavior. Boulevard is my brother, and I will love him as I would love any other friend. I want us to view 2 video clips back to back without commentary, and then we'll come back. This first video is called An Openly Gay Pastor's Journey to Acceptance in the Bible Belt. This is a pastor, a church worker who comes to the South to explore homosexuality and the church.
Community can be found in many places, but in the South, church is everything. In fact, the South is by far the most religious region in the country. A recent study indicates that an overwhelming 90% of Southerners believe in God. And over 80% say that religion is an important part of their daily lives. All right, let's back it up.
I want to hear the whole thing with the video. Yes, thank you. And let's raise the volume just a little bit. Community can be found in many places,
but in the South, church is everything. In fact, the South is by far the most religious region in the country. A recent study indicates that an overwhelming 90% of Southerners believe in God. And over 80% say that religion is an important part of their daily lives. But many churches still reject LGBTQ people, who often have to decide between hiding who they are or being cut off from the biggest source of community they've ever known. But that's not the case in every church. I recently traveled to one of the most devout places in the country, Mississippi. And right there in the capital of Jackson, I found a church with an openly gay pastor whose mission it is to welcome anyone and everyone into their community of faith.
Hi, You must be Pastor Lowry. Rob Lowry. Good to have you with us.
Lon Burnside.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to Pondering.
Thank you for having me in your church today. This is a really beautiful space. How long have you been a minister in the church?
I'm going into my 20th year of ministry.
What's your journey been like as an openly gay minister? Have you always been out in the church?
I've not. I came out almost 11 years ago, and that was the end of a really long personal journey. When I went to seminary, the church at the time had a ban on gay clergy. You could not be ordained if you were openly gay in the Presbyterian church at that point. I got ordained, I got married, I got divorced.
You got married to a woman?
I got married to a wonderful woman, but our marriage didn't last. Not being out was waking up every morning and living my day dishonestly.
See, what the community learned when Jesus healed that man in the cemetery, your world has to change with the gospel.
One day in the middle of the day, it just dawned on me that the only way for me to truly be the person I feel called to be in the church was to be the person I truly feel called to be entirely. Being openly gay and being out in the world, that's the only way for me to wake up in the morning and start telling the truth every day.
Jesus reaches into the world and brings compassion and love and healing and wholeness where there was none.
And so when you decided to come out, what kind of responses did you get from the church?
It was sort of a 99-to-1 ratio of people who were tremendously welcoming and embracing. Friends, my family, my colleagues, all, without exception, were wonderfully welcoming to me.
That's incredible. You realize that's like not the experience of most people.
I realize exactly how lucky I am. I really do.
I grew up going to a private Christian school. I was in church every day. Mm-hmm. It was my life.
Yeah.
I worked at a church that was non-denominational but had Southern Baptist roots. Mm-hmm. I led a team of about 50 volunteers. I, too, never thought that being out was an option. I sort of suppressed these thoughts, mm-hmm. these feelings for so long, just thinking that I'd be able to pray it away.
Yeah.
I told my pastor that I was attracted to men, and I lost my job. And it took me years to be able to walk back into a church. Sure. What that experience did for me was made me question everything that I thought I knew to be true, mm-hmm. About God, about the church, about myself. And so I had to figure out a new way to engage with mm-hmm. God. And a part of that was leaving the church. Mm-hmm. Now that life seems so far away.
Sure.
And figuring out how to build that community has been a really difficult journey to figure out how to get there.
The world has learned. The world has grown. We are growing into a new people, a new community.
Part of your life, your journey coming out is about sharing that part of you. Sometimes it happens like mine did, where I'm surrounded by a community that embraces me. Sometimes it happens like your story, where all of a sudden this bedrock in your life is drawn out from under you. When I encounter folks feeling cut off from what they knew and sort of adrift, what I tell them is build a community. Find a community that honors who you are. Because the one thing God wants out of this is for you to know that you are valued and honored. You're not on this earth to pray away the gay any more than you are to pray away the straight or anything else.
What do you think it was about the particular community in which you existed that made them so welcoming that you think other people can learn from?
In this community right here, is not defined by a bunch of people who who live and think and act alike. In this church, I've got people who are lifelong, deep political and social conservatives, and I've got young trans people who are coming and sharing their gifts with us. We bear witness to the fact that agreeing with people is not what makes community. Loving people is what makes community. So I think that we're demonstrating in who we are what can be possible in the world. And I think that's just vitally important today.
Wow, that sounds like something I could get behind. Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Where do you find community?
I find community everywhere.
I find community in theater.
I find community in being a gamer, and that's G-A-Y-M-E-R.
I find community all around me.
Friends.
The folks I go to the gym with, my book club, and play parties.
Through group chats.
Going to physical places.
In taquerias, in barbershops.
Through my activism work, through art. I like to build community everywhere I go, and then help those communities build and grow together too.
August 9th, 2014, I was hit by a truck walking home. There would be no way I would not be here if it wasn't for Jesus. Jesus was there with me. I'm very blessed that I'm still here and that, you know, with all the pain and tears and blood that I shed, I was able to be here, just to keep pushing forward. And I'm not gonna let it stop me.
Tell me about your first memories of growing up at the church.
It was very rough. One minute we'll go to Bible study, or I'm very into playing instruments. So every time I was getting into the spotlight, I always got pulled right back out of it. I mean, I guess it's because, I wasn't gonna play drums in a dress. I rather wear jeans and a t-shirt, and that wasn't good enough. It was already bad enough that I was into jeans and a t-shirt, but it was always bad that I was a big girl. So, I was constantly picked on about my weight, constantly picked on how to wear a dress, constantly picked on how to wear my hair, and unfortunately that was coming from my mother. I don't know if she know how much it damaged me. I'm adopted, so I was adopted when I was 2. And after my brother, she couldn't have any kids after that. So she wanted a girl. And so she adopted me, but clearly, I'm definitely not the female or the girl that she wanted. I was 14 years old. I think everyone knew about it. And I was 14 years old when it happened. And I just kind of came to my mom when she was on the computer. And I was just like, so Mom, so I like girls. She's like, what do you mean you like girls? It's like girls, you know, like a girl, like a boy. I like girls. Oh, okay. Well, I know I changed your diaper, so I know what you are. And I said, oh, okay. So I'm thinking, you know, maybe it was okay, but it wasn't. So I pretty much been out here since I was probably 19. I've probably been to almost every shelter in Atlanta. I haven't always been like that. I have came on my feet, but because, you know, never taught how the way a person's supposed to love you, I took love all the wrong places, so I came back on the street. So when my accident happened, Lord, that was torture. It was like, the first person that came to visit me in the hospital was Rick, and he's the founder of this organization.
Your mother didn't come?
My mother probably only came to see me 4 times in the hospital compared to Lost and Found. Because I was there for 2 months, you know, 23 surgeries, getting blood. Every surgery, they had to put blood back in me because I was losing so much blood, and they wasn't sure I was gonna be alive, but.
Do you think that the main reason why your mother has kicked you out is because you are a lesbian?
Yes. Like I've been called a dyke from her plenty of times, Even when I was in the hospital, she didn't like the fact that I had gay people coming to see me in the hospital. She didn't like that. There was actually a time at my brother's wedding where there was an incident, and he doesn't even know that this ever happened. But that was the first time, probably in like forever, I had a dress. And I felt completely uncomfortable. I'd never been comfortable in my skin, and I kind of blamed it on her, kinda, because, you know, my outside, it was never okay with her. And so I was getting ready. I mean, we've been out at my brother's wedding for like 8 hours, and I went to go get some food, and she literally came up in line, took a plate, and told me to go sit my fat, dyke ass down in front of everybody. 2 years ago, I was engaged, and I was not in love with this dude at all. Like, no. And it was just like, I kind of feel like I had to force myself to do this because I just wanted something so much from my mother, something that I wanted. Like, I mean, it's already bad enough that my mother gave me up, but for someone who said they love you to adopt you and then just throw you out there to the world, to the bunch of wolves, like, and I wanted that, I really did. And I tried everything to make her happy.
How was that being with someone that you didn't want to be with in your soul?
Boy, that pretending part, I'm a good actor. But no, it was horrible. Like, I actually felt like I was a prostitute. Like, I guess, I don't know if that's too forward, but I just feel like, I mean, pretty much, because at the time I was homeless. This guy had money, and he would have been straight. I probably would have been straight. And I feel like that I was pretty much sleeping with him, because I wasn't in love with him, but I feel like I was sleeping with him for money, cars, and a nice house. And I was like, that's what it felt like for me.
And for the love of your mom.
Yeah, definitely. That right there was something that I did want it. I had a friend when I was, actually it was like extra 3 weeks after we graduated. That's kind of when he kind of came out saying pretty much that, I mean, we know that he was gay, but we didn't know that he wanted, I mean, I knew, but a lot of people didn't know he wanted to trans. And it was already hard because his father was already hard on him, but now to the point that he said that, it pretty much took a toll on him. And I was trying so hard to get to him that night, and it just bothers me so much that I couldn't get to him in time. But he took his father gun and shot himself in his car. So, yeah, that was very hard. And it was crazy because I was so upset at the funeral. I thought I wanted to fight his father because he tried to act like he was this amazing father, but you tried to kick your son out the house. Then you beat the shit out of him. Had him come to school with 2 black eyes. It was just horrible. I mean, you like throwing out half of his clothes because there wasn't many of them. Like, come on, like, and you gonna sit here talking about how you're a good father? You didn't even support your own kid. And it was just, and it just breaks my heart that he had to take his life. And it's sad. There's a lot of people taking their lives because, you know, of their parents. Parents are supposed to protect their kids and love them, but you treat them like shit. I mean, I'm happy the times that I tried to commit suicide that it didn't happen because, I mean, I'm able to tell his story that, you know, if you're trying to give up, please don't give up. It's not worth, it's not worth taking your life.
Being transgender in the Black church presents another level of prejudice and misunderstanding. The refusal to accept that gender can be fluid often isolates and exiles a whole community of people. As activist and author Janet Mock said, gender is who you go to bed as, sexual orientation is who you go to bed with. For trans youth in the church, where is their safe haven?
I am embarrassed by the church's response to the gay community. We, under the guise of being faithful to Jesus, can be so cruel and insensitive and non-loving. Every person created, whether you agree with their lifestyle or not, is a person for whom Christ died, and they deserve our love and respect. You don't have to agree with them. I'm a conservative evangelical Bible preacher. I cannot get with my gay friends when the conversation turns towards, hey, listen, the only thing that matters is whether you're true to yourself. You know, I'm walking in my truth, you're walking in your truth. You know, that's the only thing that matters. No, it's not the only thing that matters. Don't get it twisted. We have to talk. But I love you, and there's not a thing you can do about it. And I'm not going to not love you because I'm a Christian. And you and I disagree. Well, yes, I disagree with the gossiper too, but I'm still going to love them. I just disagree with the liar too, but I'm still going to love them. I'll tell you one story and then we're going to end. I have a friend whom I've known since he was in middle school. I was in college. I ministered at their church, and I got to know that family, and I ministered at that church a number of times. I got to know that family pretty well. Fast forward, the young man who was in middle school when I met him is now an adult, and I'm preaching in the city in which he lives. He came to hear me that night, and he said, could I take you back to your hotel? And I said, yes. And just before I got out of the car, he said, I need to tell you something. And he said, I'm gay. And I had suspected as much because of just some of the ways he carried himself and some of those ways he spoke. And he said, my parents are very embarrassed by my choice. He said, and I have a number of friends who've said, I cannot be with you anymore. He said, and so I understand, Richard, if you don't want to be my friend anymore. And as a man, by that time I'd known him 20 years. And I said, now you listen to me. I turned to him in his car. I said, you listen to me. I do not agree with your lifestyle and the choice you've made. But I said, I'm like rock and roll. I'm here to stay. And I meant that thing. I preached his mother's funeral a couple of years ago. I'm in regular contact with him. And I've met his partner, and I can't celebrate many of the things that he does in his life, but I'm like rock and roll. I'm in there. I said I loved you 20 years ago, and I'm not going to rescind that simply because you and I are at odds theologically. Genesis 1:26, 27. God created them male and female. I believe that. I stand on that. I take that literally, that God created me as male, and that's what I am. However, I can have a conversation with you and love you, even if you don't stand in that same place. Let us pray. Holy God, thank you for the people you've placed in our lives. Some of whom have poured into us and profoundly marked us, and some of whom we get to pour into, and we will profoundly mark them. Thank you for our families. Thank you for the difficult conversations that we have to have. because we are family. Grant us wisdom as we navigate this life with all its issues, with all its choices, with all its complexity. I pray for us as the church that you would help us remember Jesus, who commanded us to love each other and others outside the community of faith. May we hear Jesus clearly. We do not believe that you hate any person because of their sexual choices and orientation. We believe that you love the world and sent Christ for it. Help us to love the world as well and to give ourselves to proclaiming Jesus in it and to it. We ask this in the name of the Lord Christ, who was born as a human, born as a man, and gave himself to death that we might live. In his name we pray with thanksgiving. Amen. We close with a hymn, a classic hymn that is a prayer. May the mind of